The moment I realized my child was gone, a chill ran down my spine, but nothing prepared me for who I would blame first. I had always trusted Athena, our home servant. She had been with us for years, helping with every little thing, from cooking breakfast to tucking my child into bed. I had never doubted her loyalty, not once. But that evening, as I entered my child's room and found it empty, a sense of dread clawed at me. The toys scattered across the floor, the little blanket half folded. It all screamed of abrupt disappearance. I am Armaan, a father who believed in protecting my child from every danger. Yet here I was, powerless. My spouse had been away on a business trip, leaving me to handle the evening routine. Athena had been in the kitchen, humming softly as she usually did, the scent of spices lingering in the air. But that familiar hum felt strange tonight, too quiet, too measured. At first, I tried to calm myself, thinking perhaps my child had wandered into the backyard or peeked into the neighbor's house. But a growing unease gnawed at me. Athena had always been nearby, always attentive, always watchful. And now, in the silence of the house, her eyes avoided mine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us, a subtle tension I hadn't noticed before. The way she paused mid-step when I called my child's name, the way her hands trembled slightly while arranging the utensils, small, almost imperceptible signs, but my instinct screamed that she knew more than she was letting on. By the time I dialed my spouse's number, my heart was racing and my mind was spinning. How could someone I trusted so deeply betray me in the worst possible way? The night outside seemed unusually still, almost complicit, as if the darkness itself held secrets. I couldn't shake the suspicion gnawing at me. What if Athena had been involved? I clenched my fists, my eyes scanning the empty room once more. Something had broken in the balance of our home. A shadow had crept in where trust once lived, and I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. The hours after my child disappeared felt like a slow, merciless torment. Every tick of the clock echoed in my chest like a hammer. I couldn't focus, couldn't think. The police had been called, neighbors questioned, yet there was no sign of my little one. And through it all, Athena moved around the house with an unsettling calmness. At first, I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things. Maybe my trust was blinding me. Maybe I was seeing shadows where none existed. But then the little things began to add up. Yesterday, I had noticed how Athena always lingered near my child, a little too much, whispering secrets only my child could hear. She had a way of making my little one giggle, a warmth that seemed natural. Yet tonight it felt like manipulation. A few weeks ago, I had seen her checking my wallet when I wasn't looking. I hadn't confronted her. Who wants to accuse someone without proof? But the memory now seemed sinister in hindsight. Could she have been planning something all along? And then there were the secret calls. She would step outside or into the storeroom to speak on her phone, lowering her voice whenever I came close. I hadn't thought much of it before, but now each whispered word seemed like it could be a hidden plot. Even her behavior toward my spouse started to feel different. She flinched whenever my spouse called, avoided eye contact, and seemed unusually defensive about minor tasks. It wasn't outright hostility, but subtle enough to make me uneasy. And yet, she treated some neighbors' children like royalty, buying sweets, giving extra attention, hugging them like they were hers. Why wasn't she this attentive with my child? Or worse, why had that favoritism seemed to grow in the last month? I began noticing inconsistencies in her stories. She would claim my child had been napping in the afternoon, only for the nanny camera to reveal otherwise. The little lies piled up like bricks in my chest, each one making it harder to breathe. I questioned myself constantly. Was I being paranoid? Was this just stress talking? But deep down, I knew something was off. I stayed awake that night, staring at the empty crib, replaying the day in my mind. Athena had seemed ordinary. even caring for years. Yet the way she moved around the house now, the way her eyes darted whenever I spoke, made me feel as though I was watching a stranger live in my home. My heart ached not just for my child, but for the innocence I had taken for granted, the blind trust I had placed in someone who might not have deserved it. Even the smallest actions began to trigger suspicion. A missing spoon, a misplaced toy, a door left slightly ajar. Each minor anomaly felt like a coded message meant for someone else. I couldn't tell if I was unraveling from fear, or if the truth was really hiding in plain sight. And the strangest part was Athena's composure, calm, almost smug at times, as though she knew a secret that I was desperate to uncover. By morning, exhaustion had taken over my body, but my mind refused to rest. Each passing hour without my child intensified the gnawing worry, the helplessness, and the anger. I tried to recall every interaction with Athena, every nuance in her behavior that I had overlooked. And slowly, piece by piece, the shadows of doubt began to converge toward one impossible thought. Could someone I trusted completely really betray me in this unimaginable way? The idea was terrifying, yet oddly compelling. I needed answers. And deep down, I knew that the first cracks had already appeared. The red flags were there, whispering warnings in subtle gestures and hidden truths. Now I just had to follow them, even if it meant uncovering the darkness that had invaded the very walls of my home. I had been turning over every detail in my mind for days, each sleepless night feeding a growing storm inside me. Then the truth hit me like a blow I couldn't have prepared for. My child wasn't just missing. My own servant, Athena, had orchestrated it. It started with a call I intercepted while pretending to be out of the house. Athena's hushed voice trembled slightly with urgency, speaking to someone whose number I didn't recognize. I strained to catch words, my pulse hammering in my ears. I have him. Don't worry, it'll be done soon. The father has no idea yet. Time seemed to freeze. My hands went numb, my mind unable to process the magnitude of what I had just overheard. Athena, the woman I trusted implicitly, who had watched over my child like her own, was behind the disappearance. The betrayal wasn't some petty theft or a fleeting lie. It was a calculated act, a violation of the most sacred trust a parent could have. I rushed home and confronted her, my voice trembling between fear and fury. "Where is my child, Athena?" I demanded, searching her face for even a flicker of remorse. She smiled faintly, a terrifying mix of calm and defiance. "You'll find out soon enough," she said, her tone chilling in its casualness. Patience is a virtue, isn't it? Every word felt like a dagger. I couldn't breathe. My heart ached not just from fear for my child, but from the sheer disbelief that someone I had let into our most private, vulnerable spaces could betray us so utterly. The home that had once felt safe now felt like a cage filled with shadows. I replayed every interaction, every gesture, every moment of trust I had placed in her. The late night whispers, the secret calls, the small lies, they weren't signs of harmless behavior. They were clues. Each red flag I had brushed off was now screaming at me. I had been blind, and it had nearly cost me everything. Anger surged through me, raw and consuming. How could she do this? My mind raced with visions of confrontation, revenge, justice. I thought of storming the house, dragging her into the streets, or calling the police immediately. But I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move could put my child in even greater danger. I felt a strange mix of heartbreak and rage. My child's laughter, the little hands I held every morning, the bedtime stories, they had been manipulated, used as leverage by someone I had trusted more than my own instincts. And yet, beneath all the pain, a flicker of determination ignited. I wouldn't let this betrayal define the end. I wouldn't be a victim. Athena had made a mistake underestimating the lengths a parent would go to protect their child. And though I was shaken, scared, and furious, I began to plan my next moves, each one carefully, quietly, like a predator waiting for the right moment. The storm of betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also awakened a ferocity I didn't know I possessed. And as I looked around the house, now suffused with tension and silent menace, I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. Athena had played her hand, but I was ready to play mine, and the next chapter would be mine to write. The first night after discovering Athena's betrayal, I sat alone in the empty nursery, staring at the crib where my child should have been sleeping. My chest felt heavy, my mind spinning with fear and rage. I had been paralyzed by shock, haunted by the idea that someone I had trusted completely could betray me so cruelly. But as the hours dragged on, a slow, burning realization began to take hold. Fear wouldn't save my child. Hesitation wouldn't save my child. Only action would. I thought back to every moment I had shared with my child, the first steps, the soft bedtime whispers, the way their tiny hand fit perfectly in mine. The thought of losing them forever was unbearable. And that unbearable fear turned into something sharper, something fiercer. This wasn't just about anger anymore. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming the one person in the world whose life depended entirely on me. I clenched my fists and took a deep, trembling breath. I will not let this happen, I whispered to the empty room. My voice was low, steady, almost foreign in its resolve. The helplessness that had consumed me was being replaced by clarity. I had been a victim of deception, yes, but no longer. I would channel every ounce of pain, every tear, and every shudder of fear into strategy, into focus. The turning point came when I realized something I had ignored in the first rush of panic. Athena had underestimated me. She had believed that I would crumble, that I would beg, that I would hand over control to her. But she had forgotten one thing. The bond between a parent and child is unbreakable. That bond gave me a strength I didn't know I possessed, a fierce, primal determination that demanded I act. I started making mental notes. Athena had been meticulous. Secret calls, quiet movements, subtle lies. Every detail I had dismissed as minor now became a piece of the puzzle. I needed patience, observation, and cunning. I would gather proof, track her actions, and turn her own arrogance against her. And while I planned, I let anger simmer quietly, transforming it into precision rather than chaos. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a flicker of control. I could almost see it, Athena's smug smile fading as I systematically dismantled her plans. I imagined confronting her not just with words, but with undeniable truth, exposing her deception in a way that would leave no room for doubt. And I promised myself that when my child returned safely, she would understand the full weight of her betrayal. That night, I barely slept, but I didn't feel powerless anymore. The fear was still there, yes, gnawing and persistent, but it had company now. Purpose, determination, and resolve. I was no longer just a parent in despair. I was a guardian, a force willing to go to any lengths to reclaim what was mine. By morning, I had made a silent vow. This betrayal would not break me. It would ignite me. And as I stood at the window, watching the first rays of sunlight filter into the house, I felt it, the inner strength of a parent fueled by love, sharpened by betrayal, and ready to fight back. Athena may have thought she had control, but she had awoken something she could never contain. The relentless drive of a parent determined to protect their child at all costs. The first step was observation. I had to know everything Athena did, every move, every call, every hidden action. I began keeping a silent vigil in the house, pretending to work, eat, or rest, while my eyes and ears tracked her every motion. I reviewed security camera footage from the past month, and slowly, patterns emerged: secret trips to the market at odd hours, whispered phone calls behind closed doors, small amounts of money disappearing from my purse. Each tiny detail became a thread, and I was determined to weave them into a web that would trap her completely. Next came proof. I couldn't confront her without solid evidence. She was too clever, too practiced at covering her tracks. I set up hidden cameras near the places she usually slipped away to: the pantry, the back porch, and even the laundry room. I tracked her phone activity discreetly, noting who she contacted and when. Each secret revealed added weight to my resolve, a confirmation that my instincts had been right all along. Then came the psychological part of the plan. Athena had thrived on the illusion of control. She had believed that I was paralyzed with fear, that my desperation would make me predictable. I needed her to feel confident, untouchable, so that she would slip up. I acted normally around her, even cordial, never revealing that I knew. I laughed at her jokes, complimented her cooking, and even let her make small decisions in the house. All the while, I was carefully observing, calculating, preparing. The most critical step would be confronting her at exactly the right moment. I couldn't afford a rushed or public showed, and it had to be precise. I envisioned how I would lay out the evidence, the phone records, the security footage, the money trail, all leading to the undeniable truth of her betrayal. And then, with the right mix of strategy and timing, I would corner her so completely that there would be no room for excuses, no escape. I also had to consider my child's safety. Any misstep could make things worse. I discreetly informed a trusted friend outside the house, someone who could act quickly if needed. I memorized every route Athena could take, every exit, every hiding place. I had to be ready for anything, because this was no longer just a test of courage. It was a race against time. Even as I meticulously planned, Athena remained unaware of how close I was. She moved through the house with her usual air of control, unaware that every lie she had told, every secret she had kept, was slowly being uncovered. I let her think she was still in command, while I laid the foundation for her ultimate exposure. By the end of the day, my plan was set. I had patience, evidence, and strategy. The storm of betrayal had given way to the calm precision of preparation. And while Athena still walked the house with false confidence, I knew the moment of reckoning was approaching. Soon, every secret she had hidden in the shadows would be illuminated, and she would realize that the parent she had tried to deceive was more formidable than she could have imagined. The night of reckoning arrived like a storm on the horizon. Athena moved through the house with the same casual confidence she had worn for months, unaware that every step, every gesture, every word was being recorded and catalogued. I had orchestrated the day meticulously, ensuring the pieces of her deception were ready to collapse like a house of cards the moment I struck. I invited her into the living room under the pretense of discussing household tasks. She smiled, the familiar air of superiority in her posture, her eyes scanning the room as if she owned every corner. She had no idea the security footage, the phone records, the financial trails, and witness statements I had compiled were all displayed on my laptop before her eyes, ready to tell the story she had tried to hide. I started slow, calm, almost conversational. "Athena, I've been thinking about the past few weeks," I said, my voice steady, each word deliberate. "There are inconsistencies I can't ignore." She laughed lightly, the sound brittle. "Inconsistencies? I have no idea what you mean," she said, waving her hands as if brushing away dust. I clicked the laptop, and the first video played, her whispering into a phone, arranging meetings in hushed tones, discussing my child's whereabouts. The smile faltered. I can explain," she stammered, but I let her panic simmer in silence. Then came the phone records, Calls made at odd hours, messages deleted, a clear timeline of conspiracy. Every lie she had told unraveled in real time. I watched her face shift from confidence to disbelief, her breathing quickening as the walls closed in. Next, I revealed the financial trail. Money missing from my purse, small sums siphoned out in preparation for some unknown scheme. And finally, I brought out witness accounts from neighbors who had noticed her odd behavior, corroborating everything on screen. The room was silent except for her shallow, panicked breaths. Athena, the woman who had dared to manipulate, to betray, to take my child for her selfish schemes, was cornered completely. I let her feel the weight of her own arrogance. "You thought I wouldn't notice," I said softly, leaning closer, eyes locked on hers. "You thought my fear would keep you in control, but you forgot one thing. There is nothing more relentless than a parent protecting their child." Her lips trembled, she sank to her knees, the illusion of power shattered. I didn't shout, I didn't strike. My triumph was in the precision of exposure, in the undeniable evidence of her betrayal. She was humiliated, trapped by the very life she had tried to manipulate. Then, in the quiet aftermath, I reached for my phone. I had already alerted the authorities, provided every piece of evidence, and prepared the legal route to ensure justice. The calls went out, and within hours she was taken into custody, her deception fully laid bare, and my child. I ran into the room where they had been kept safe, thankfully unharmed, and held them close. The terror, the months of suspicion, the sleepless nights, they all dissolved in that single embrace. Athena's plot had failed, and the bond that no one could break, the bond between parent and child, remained unshaken. The storm of betrayal had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. Justice had been served not through force, but through patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve. And as I watched Athena escorted away, the finality of her downfall felt cinematic, satisfying, the perfect counterpoint to the fear she had once wielded like a weapon in our home. The morning after Athena was taken away, the house felt impossibly still. The air was lighter somehow, free of tension, fear, and deceit. Sunlight streamed through the windows, touching each corner that had once felt shadowed by suspicion. I walked through the rooms, my child safely in my arms, and finally allowed myself to breathe fully. Justice had been served. Athena's betrayal, her calculated manipulation, her attempt to profit from my worst nightmare, had collapsed completely. She was left exposed, stripped of the power she had believed she wielded, and now facing the consequences of her actions. The authorities had praised the thoroughness of the evidence I had gathered, and neighbors whispered their admiration at how calmly and strategically I had handled the situation. But the greatest victory wasn't in public recognition. It was in the quiet, irreplaceable moments with my child, the laughter bouncing off the walls, the tiny hands clutching mine, the trust that had been shaken but never broken. In protecting them, I had discovered a strength I didn't know I had, a resilience fueled by love, sharpened by betrayal, and honed by relentless determination. I spent hours reflecting, thinking about the thin line between trust and deception, about how quickly familiarity can turn into vulnerability. And yet, despite the pain, there was a lesson. Betrayal can wound, but it can also awaken a fierceness that no lie can suppress. The fire inside me that night, when I realized what had happened, had transformed fear into strategy, heartbreak into action, and despair into resolve. Now, as I looked into my child's eyes, I realized that poetic justice had a quiet, almost cinematic beauty. Athena had underestimated the bond between a parent and child, the power of a heart willing to fight for what is rightfully theirs. She had tried to control, manipulate, and steal, only to find herself dismantled by the very love she could not understand. And so I leave you with this, watching from wherever you are. Betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, even those closest to us. But know this truth: love and vigilance have a way of reclaiming balance. If you've ever faced someone you trusted who turned against you, I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. Let's remind each other that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to rise, to fight, and to protect what matters most. If you found this story gripping, emotional, and empowering, don't forget to subscribe. Together, we witness betrayal, survival, and the sweet, satisfying moment when justice prevails. Remember, those who attempt to break you often become the architects of their own downfall, while your strength, quiet, unwavering, relentless, becomes your most powerful revenge.